Analysis of Hebrew and Balanta Narrative Connectors by Cutsau Nhuta, Bible Translation Conference, Dallas, October 2023. This study aimed to analyze connectors problems in Bible translations with focus on Hebrew and Balanta narrative text. It is very important because connectors are a crucial issue in Bible translation, for their incorrect usage affects clause, sentence, or paragraph relationships, which causes the text to lose accuracy and naturalness in the target language. The Balanta is an Atlantic language of the Niger-Congo branch, spoken in Guinea-Bissau, a country located in West Africa between Atlantic Oceans, Senegal, and Guinea-Conakry. Hebrew is written and read from right to left, and it is VSO word order. The Balanta is written and read from left to right, following Latin scripts, and the word order is SVO. We are going to talk about the following things: temporal relations, logical relations, contrastive relations, interjective relations, and then ends up with strategies for translating the connectors. Talking about temporal relations, in both language, Hebrew and Balanta, it is clear that narratives use connectors in order to be comprehensible. But both languages cannot be treated in the same way because they have different conjoining words that are used for relationships between ideas, sentence, clause, and words. The Hebrew connectors verb is very important. Adoptions observed that when verb begin a sentence, we must think carefully how to translate it into other languages. He goes further to say that when translating into other languages, we must study how sentences are linked. For example, in Genesis 39, verse 1, it is read, Veyosef hurad Mitzrayim vayeknahu Potiphar Sherim Pharaoh. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of the Pharaoh's officials, bought him. In Balanta, it is read, Benumzuze watching Ezitu, they took Joseph to the land of Egypt. According to the examples above, Translator's Handbook observes that now is used to translate the Hebrew connectives, which serves as a transitions to a new episode. This text is again openings and episodes about Joseph's after having left his story at the end of chapter 37. Translator's Handbook advised that in many languages, it will be necessary to make clear that we are again picking up the thread of the Joseph story and not continuing the Judah and Tamar story. Therefore, this could have been translated in Balanta as the example below. Wambu bunumzuze abochingi zitu. Now, they took Joseph to the land of Egypt. In the story about Nton Konkobor, written by Domingos Kuade, such forms is presented. Wambu bidis to Aftamba. Now they pass and go to the seaside. Adoptions highlighted that within a narrative, If there are many events happening, the verb forms may follow each other in rapid succession. For examples, in Genesis 41 verse 14, it is read, Vaislach Pharaoh Vaikra et Yosef Vaye Ritzu min Habor Vaigala Vaichalech Simlotaf Vayavo El Paro. So Pharaoh sends for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the Dagon. When he had saved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. In Balanta, it is read, Abe Pharaoh hituga zuze. Biyan matichaka gorufi, abe haretiek ayuntot jatn. Hadis tohangedena Pharaoh. So Pharaoh sent to call Joseph. He was taken out quickly from prisons. So he saved his beard, changed his clothes. He went to answer Pharaoh. This string of 6 verbs indicates a series of 6 actions describing how the young man Joseph reached to the king of Egypt. Balanta does not connect every actions with a conjoining word like Hebrew does by using the verb. In my understandings, Balanta could have used different connectors instead of using the same connector abe twice. For instance, it could have been like this. Abe Pharaoh hituga zuze, bribian matichak agrofi, bon haretne yake, hat hayundot jatn, hadi hadis toa nyarena Pharaoh. So Pharaoh sent to call Joseph. Then he was quickly brought out from prisons. When he saved his beard, also changed his clothes, then he went to answer Pharaoh. Logical relations. Logical connectors carry propositional contents and instructions that can be considered as linguistic elements that operate as device which serves to make the discourse coherent. For example, in Genesis 20 verse 10, it is read, Vayomer Avimelech el Abraham, Marahita ki asita et hadavar hazeh. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? In Balanta, it is read, Abimelech san hat kwa Abraham. Wina hatid ayat negatif kongwel ko. Abimelech say also to Abraham, what you think you did such thing? Balanta translation does not use causal connectors, key, which appears in this verse. It sounds good and there is no meaning lost in the translation process. However, there is a possibility of using a connector secate so that to make it sounds natural in Balanta, allowing the flow of the narratives in a way that make it easier to read and understand. For examples, it could have been, Wina hatid sekate ayat nekasif kumwelko. What you think so that you did such thing. Contrastive relations. Murray asserts that adversative relations indicate that the second sentence contrasts or limits the scope of the contents of the first sentence. Hebrew uses connector vav and Balanta uses connector wetandi for contrasting information. For example, in Jonah chapter 1, verse 3, it is read in Hebrew, Vayakom Yona livroha Tarshisha milifne Adonai. But Jonah set out to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. In Balanta it is read, Abe Jonah sit data fitting Fabanghale. So Jonas got up running from the command of our Father God. In Balanta, contrastive connector wetandi is not used in the above examples, but rather prefer to use additionals or conclusives connector abe, then, or so. How can conclusive connectors be used in the place of a contrastive connector? Clark et al. Observe that vav here marks the contrast between God's command and Jonah's decisions to do something quite different. This adversative can be indicated by an introductory conjunction such as but. Balanta could have used the connector wetandi as the example below. Wetandi Jonah said that fiti mfabanghale, but Jonah got up running from the commands of our Father God. Interjective relations. Interjections is a word or phrase used to express feelings and emotions. Cambridge Dictionary refers that we use interjections to express emotions such as pleasure, surprise, shocks, and disgust. Most interjections are just sounds rather than actual words and come at the beginnings or at the end of what we say. Hebrew connector hine, it is very important. In Genesis chapter 29, verse 25, it is read, Vayehi baboker, vehine hu Leah, Vayomer el Lavan, ma zot asita li halo berachel avati ima velama rimitani. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob says to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? In Balanta, this is read, Ntalbet nyane, Jacob yeka yaleyahon, kambongwewi, hayaga Laban. Kusif kuina hayate nyabo. When daybreak, Jacob realized that it was Leah. Because of that, he said to Laban, what have you done to me? Balanta could have given a better renderings on these Hebrew emotional expressions. See the example below. Ntalvit nyani Jacob yiga yale yahon, hasele, kambungwebi ayagalabo. Kasif kuina haya tinyabo. When they break, Jacob realized that it was Leah. He exclaimed. Because of that, he said to Laban, "What have you done to me?" Then now we come to strategies for connectors translations. A good translation requires translators to be able to use linking word appropriately to link phrase, clause, sentences, and paragraphs in a way that makes the translation text or translated text accurate and natural. It is very important for translators to know how to use connectors appropriately, since some connectors in the source text, which in this case is Hebrew, may have multifunctional dimensions, particularly when we are talking about vav and hine. The first thing is to understand connectors in each context. In order to discover the right purpose of a particular connectors, one needs to examine the context of the text closely. Dolly and Levinson pointed out that the context for something is the situations in which it is embedded, in which it is seen as a part of a larger whole. Translators need to get the bigger picture of the entire text in order to be able to translate the connectors in that particular text appropriately. Another thing is to produce a text that makes sense. A translator should always have in mind that the connected ideas should be well related to each other. Barker observes that a conjunctions involve the use of formal markers to relate sentence, clause, and paragraphs to each other. They signal the way the writer or speakers wants the reader or hearer to relate what is about to be said to what has been said before. Another thing is to consider connectors' functions. Hill et al. Argues that a lack of understandings of the connectors' functions in the source text leads to the misunderstandings of the author's meaning. And also, the lack of understandings of the connectors' functions in the target language can interfere with the translator's ability to express things naturally in the target language. Therefore, in the translation process, translators need to be aware of the occurrence of connectors in the text that is being translated and try to discover their functions. Translators need to consider the best way to connect different sentences into a cohesive text using the appropriate connectives which can be drawn from the context. To conclude, I could say a well-done translation is the one that sounds natural and makes sense to the readers of the target language. This paper demonstrates how the meaning or expressions of connectors in Hebrew can be translated into the target language without losing the impact or interfere with the original meaning. Thank you very much. Questions and comments.